First, we have Adam Liska, who's the CEO of Glyphic, so an AI sales co-pilot. Adam is a Zoogler, so ex-DeepMind engineer. He has a PhD in how the brain and kind of neural networks also work. So that's going to be super interesting to dig into. Glyphic is one of the UK's leading AI companies, so it'll be great to have him. So Adam, if you can make your way up. Next up, we have Pierre. So Pierre is also ex-Google product manager. He's got a PhD from the University of Cambridge. So 2 doctors rolling up. And Pierre's been building some fantastic AI tools for his clients. It'll be good to hear about the work he's doing at Deliberate Digital. Next up, we've got JJ, who's the CEO of Marlum. They are, a fundamental company leading a lot of the tools emerging around AI search, SEO, and great to have her and hear about sort of how these tools are emerging and the capabilities they're giving companies. So JJ, please. Cool. And finally, we've got Arvind, who's the head of growth at Telescope. I was explaining how Telescope works earlier and what it can do, and someone was like that exists now. Like, you can do that. I'm like, yeah, you can do that now. So Telescope is a sales lead generation tool, something I use daily to pull in some of the best leads. Arvind's head of growth and experienced entrepreneur himself. So please head on up. Okay, so the title is Silicon Intuition, How LLMs Learn, Think, and Respond. So just to sort of set the space, I think it's good to just take a step back. LLMO, the big piece of it is all the LLM part, right? And how do these LLMs work? What incentives do they have? What structures do they have? And how can we best use them? So I thought having this mixed panel to talk about their experiences of prompting, of using generations, is be super useful. So I guess I'll open with a question for each of you, and then just as you're answering the question, if you can just give a quick 30-second intro about the company you work for and what you're up to, then that could be great as well. So I guess, Adam, I'll start with you, just because, this is about LLMs. I look at LLMs as, and Silicon Intuition is really like, this is just a brain made of a silicon, right? And what did you learn during your PhD that helped you do the work at DeepMind and then also lead to building Glyphic? And then how can we sort of conceptualize maybe the LLM as a brain? So if you can, give an intro and then.
Yeah, definitely. Even though I think I might actually make you not very happy about the answer and the kind of connection between brains and LLMs, but I'll get to that. So nice to meet you, everyone. I'm Adam, co-founder of Glyphic. As Sam mentioned, I was at DeepMind before, kind of working on the early Gemini teams before it was called Gemini. That's where I met my co-founder. We kind of saw where things were going. That was 2022. I decided to leave and start Glyphic. It's quite funny kind of thinking over the last 3 years, there was a lot of change, and kind of 2022 when we were leaving, that was May 2022. It seemed very far away, kind of Google using LLMs in products, because there were just so many kind of legal issues and many other issues. And it's quite interesting to see how things picked up since then very, very quickly. Quick intro to Glyphic, as Sal had that one slide there around, your team being your humans, the platform, and your AI agents. We're kind of building this setup for sales teams. So kind of we feel like it's really once in a lifetime, once in a generation opportunity for a change in way go-to-market teams and specifically sales teams operate. Kind of when you look at Salesforce, the promise it had, kind of, this is where all your data is, this is where you make decisions, etc. It was really predicated on you having kind of all the data in there, kind of humans putting in the data there and you analyzing that data. That promise was never delivered because kind of humans will never input objective data there and no one will actually spend time analyzing it objectively. We kind of automated that and are taking it to the next level. So how can you kind of use this data to guide your human reps, and how can you automate a lot of the end-to-end customer journey? Going now to your question around how LLMs think, I'm actually maybe gonna take the kind of the intro to LLMs, and then we can maybe build up throughout the panel, kind of how build up on that. But think of LLMs, they're actually very, very simple machines. You kind of give it some text, give it a few words, and it tries to predict the next word. And when you give it a lot of text, kind of through that, they learn a lot. So they learn about English, and that, let's say, I don't know, a verb follows a noun and things like this. That's kind of the first level that LLMs learn. The next thing, kind of when they actually read all the data on the internet, they learn things like the capital of the UK is, and then they need to predict the next word. They're going to learn that it's London. So they learn a lot around just world knowledge from the snapshot of all the data that's out there. Now, the next step is they actually learn to reason as well, just because when you look at all the data that's out there, there's a lot of human reasoning in that data as well. So, for example, take an example of, Adam is taller, well, let's actually say Pierre is taller than Adam. Adam is taller than Devang. And then Pierre is taller than, or like Pierre is, and it's going to learn actually to say taller than Devang, because it kind of saw that data in kind of similar reasoning in on the internet, in all the text that's available, and it's going to learn that this is a kind of a common reasoning pattern, and that's really it. And that's how it works. And there's the connections to brain actually it's not there much. It used to be there kind of in the early days when people were kind of thinking of, okay, this is the interconnected systems, this is how neural networks should work. But it all kind of became a bit unrelated throughout time. And I think that's how I would say LLMs think to learn. Well, learn to think and respond, and it's actually that simple. Now I'm not sure if I'm veering a bit too much off the topic, but kind of one thing that I mentioned is that you mentioned AIs stealing your traffic. I'm gonna maybe turn it around and say, do I care? Like if people are doing their research in ChatGPT and they learn about my product in ChatGPT, and only the ones with intent actually then end up on my website, maybe it's not a big problem. But maybe we get to this question a bit later, and I'll pass over to Pierre.
Cool. So yeah, Pierre, I guess it seems your PhD was more in the sciences elements of things. Maybe do you draw similarities between LLMs, AI, and nature then, if not the brain? Or no, not at all either? Okay, well, maybe also then talk about some of the things that you've experienced so far, trying to infiltrate the GPTs and some of the success you've had, and maybe an intro to Deliberate as well.
Hi, thank you for everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Pierre. I have a PhD in bacterial genetics, of all things. I'm a geek. That's all you need to know. You understand everything about me. What I do right now is that I'm a consultant. I used to work in Google Search. At one point, I was Google Search in London. I was the only one there for many years. I've been out on my own for 9.5 years. I help people build better websites. I'm a product manager to get them to think about how they can build an experience that converts better, of which search is just one touch point. So people come to me to do SEO work. It's a much richer, deeper conversation. What I've been doing in the last year and a half in AI is that, who here knows about SEO fairly well? Yeah. So Google has these things called the Search Quality Raters Guidelines, and basically it's what they use for the manual review of their algorithm changes. And fundamentally, there are a 300 and something page document that boils down to a bunch of information satisfaction scores. That's what it is. Okay, I'm belittling it too much, but it is, if you want to boil it down to this. The idea started is that can we get AI to be your internal search quality raters, to have it in-house? That was based not just out of inspiration that came to me in a shower. Bing and Google came out with research that says, yes, you can do this. Okay? Bing's paper, anybody who's done anything with AI looks at the prompts that they publish publicly, they will know immediately that these are not the prompts they were using internally because they were rubbish what they published. But they basically pushed this door open. And I said, well, if they can do it, why can't I? And that's how it started. In the last 6 months or so, the tool has built a feature that does AI monitoring. And the question for that was basically, can we monitor? Is this working? Did I press the button? Thank you. Yeah, and the idea was that can we do something where we can monitor what all of these models are talking about my brands, the keywords I care about. To go back to your point is that people use these LLMs for research. Okay, there is an inherent latent knowledge in those LLMs. I disagree wholeheartedly that they are doing anything we can call reasoning right now, because they're not doing anything that is resembling human reasoning. And I have lots of examples to show for that. So maybe we'll get there in the future. I'm not going to say no, we won't, but we're not there yet, and we're not even close. Now, the question then becomes like, well, how do people use those AI, how do people use AI in general to actually research your topic, and can we get visibility on that? Because you're not going to figure out every single phrasing of every single prompt out there and run it through every single LLM and get the answer, okay? And even if you manage to do that, the impossible, each time you run this prompt in an LLM, you're going to get a slightly different answer because that's how they work. They're statistical models, right? And so the tool was built to actually get a scientifically valid sample of what a human would do. So we would mimic human behavior. We take an audience persona, one of your consumer personas, and we run it through the LLM in a very special way, and we fan out a single query to roughly 60 other queries. Okay, so it massively explodes. And then you do that. And this is where things get very, very interesting, because you start seeing how the LLMs are behaving at scale. Okay, and you start looking at that, and then you say, well, I'm going to pick on Anthropic here, because one of the keywords I ran through the tool was password generator. You and me, our consumers, typing in a password generator, they probably want a good password generator to generate a good password. Anthropic will actually send you a Python script. They'll say, here's how you write a password generator. No, thank you. This is absolutely useless. Okay? But we did not know this until you do this. Okay? So you start saying, well, what does ChatGPT do? And different models in ChatGPT. What does Gemini do? What does AI overviews do? What does Bing generative summaries, which is what they're doing right now, which are very, very naively simple. They're very simple AI uses right now in Bing, and they're going to get better. And when you start looking at that, then you say, well, my brand does this well. These are the following industry publications that we need to care about. And the PR team is jumping on that. They're saying, oh, we know about this one. We didn't think it was that big. Now it's big. Now it becomes, on the list of people they need to engage with. We see with my clients using this tool, we are getting product feedback from the LLMs. Because when you say X versus Y kind of queries, it will tell you that you are good in this, this, and this, and this, and then you're bad in the following. Okay? Sometimes you're bad in the following because it's outdated knowledge. Sometimes the product is actually bad. Sometimes it's product positioning, like your pricing plans are wrong, whatever it is. So now suddenly we don't just have visibility about what the brand is doing. It's actually you're getting lots of feedback back into this. So to cut a long story short, nothing to do with nature, nothing to do with reasoning. You need to be looking at this at scale.
Interesting. I think, yes, we'll get onto both of your comments in a moment. JJ, you're looking at SEO and LLMO, sort of the intersection of two. And I think a lot of people are interested in how they're merging, the differences between them. How have you found mastering both? And a run through of Martin as well.
That's a really interesting question, and we've been exploring it for 2 years quite successfully, given the results. A little intro about me. I went to computer generated studies 15 years ago, which was a little bit ahead of its time back then. And as a result of that, got hired straight into the marketing store worldwide, right from uni, which wanted to drive AR, VR marketing for McDonald's Global and other global brands like Nestle, Carlsberg. So we started working on digital growth marketing, 12 years ago, straight for global brands. What we tried to achieve there was customization at scale. So how can each person in the world get a bespoke version of a product? Fast forward to today, I think my business Marlem, we're doing that quite successfully now. So using simpler technologies, not AR, VR, thankfully, but SEO, LLMs, content, inventories that each business is rich with. And what we are seeing is that LLMs are built on top of traditional SEO. So ChatGPT uses Bing's algorithm underneath. Gemini uses Google algorithm underneath, SEO algorithms. They are augmenting it. They are making it more complex. You do have to target LLMs with longer keyword topics because the way those channels are used are different. People put in paragraphs, not short phrases. So you just have to start to think about deep content. How can I produce deeper content at a bigger scale so that it tailors your products and services to those fine queries, short queries for traditional search, long queries for LLM search. And a second tip, which is huge, is LLMs train on your website's content as well as other channels like Reddit. So you are in control of your brand narrative by bulking up your website with tons of good content, and those get scraped by LLMs. They train on that and they speak about it the way you want it to be spoken about. So invest in your content, invest in your websites, bulk up your websites. One landing page, homepage is dead, it's gone. You need to have, what we do for our clients. We do 50,000 landing pages or 10,000 landing pages or 1,000 landing pages, depending on the niche, on ambition of scale. We help businesses scale across entire UK, own the entire search market in UK for venues, real estate venues. So, it's a massive opportunity for those who are going to jump on it because it's much easier to rank in LLMs currently because it's a white space channel. So, those are the few tips. And last tip is don't use AI to generate your content and there's a good reason why. If LLMs train on synthetic data, it takes very few cycles to cause something that's called model collapse. So they basically lose rationality, lose any basically high performance conversions and all that, confidence scores. So what you have to do is you have to make sure you're putting human-generated data, real data about real products and assets, and then LLMs train happily on that. There's no synthetic data involved that would cause them to collapse if they train too much on synthetic data. So, so use AI assistants to assemble your content, but don't use AI to generate the content because the days of how to boil an egg are gone because LLMs can generate that content themselves. You don't need to put that on your website. What LLMs need is the stuff they can't generate, which is best venues in a Shoreditch that are dog friendly, or a wedding dress in Balham that is suitable for pregnant women. Stuff that AI can't generate. So you can do that. So yeah, if you follow those 3 tips, in fact, it's super easy to rank #1 in LLMs in Gemini, Perplexity, ChatGPT, Claude, even DeepSeek. DeepSeek is also now a AI-powered search channel. So it's I think those are the takeaways. I guess I would share.
Amazing, thank you, Ara. You have a interesting duality. So on one end, your company Telescope, you guys have to figure out and be very patient, prompting LLMs to get the results for the product. But at the same time, as head of growth, you're responsible for the traffic, getting the eyeballs to the products. How have you found, I guess, how have you found using these different, how have you found traffic change and evolve in how people find your product? And then a little bit on the prompting side, like, yeah, any top tips about working with LLMs, understanding them, having them as a good co-pilot or co-employee?
Hey guys, great to meet everyone, and thank you so much, Sal, for putting this together. So a little bit of background about me is like I've had a couple of agencies before exited it, and I've always had the challenge of working with people. Not that I don't like human beings, I love human beings, but how can we make them more productive, right? And that's always been a problem for me. From the time I started out in 2016, and when the AI came up, I was like, okay, it's quite interesting. I'm not a technical person, have no idea how to code. If I look at code, I get a headache. So it's pretty much the tough part. I really don't know how you guys do that, but it's pretty amazing. So wanted to join a startup. Started out with Telescope more than 15 months back. Pretty early stage company. Pretty much from a 0 to 1 stage. Joined them, understood how to build a product, because that's kind of where I want to go in the long term. That's a bit about myself. And going into what Sal was asking about right now. So the biggest challenge that we've primarily faced at Telescope when it comes to how people prompt and understand things, we don't allow people to, let's say, kind of just describe who they want upfront, right? We try to understand who exactly is their ICP. So even before you are going and searching for who you want on Telescope, we're able to understand who you exactly want. So we are kind of recommending you who the steps are.
Do you want to just explain how Telescope works, the steps and the results?
Sure. So Telescope is more like Tinder for sales. Think of you kind of swiping left or right on people who kind of are a good match for you. The LLM understands that, okay, this is exactly who Sal wants to meet or speak to. And the system understands that and is able to help you build the right list of people. So that was the first part of Telescope, and Telescope now has a second layer on top of it. We are able to behave like an AI SDR and reach out to these people directly and get those conversations going. And it's not just limited to email, it's also back on LinkedIn via automations and coming up with other platforms too. So coming back into the point what Sal was mentioning about how the prompting is happening in the system. So when you do say that I'm looking for sales leaders in B2B SaaS companies who've raised Series A, but are based only in the US, have X number of employees in the company, the system is able to understand that very easily, because again, we've manually scraped all the websites, we understand the context. We're also using multiple LLMs again to take publicly available data. We've also launched the concept of internal data. It's if you have knowledge, upload the knowledge into us. What can we take context of it and find the right people for you? So that's kind of helped us out a lot in building out the prompting structure. One more thing that I've kind of seen, especially in the case of when it comes to, we've just launched out our prompting in when people are writing the emails. And the real context over there is not just by saying that, okay, this is my ICP, this is the LinkedIn profile, go for it, right? It's also about giving that personalization, because it's easy to build 1,000 different emails for people. But the thing is, how do you really personalize to that 1 or 2 lines that really again, no one's going to read an email for more than 3 or 4 lines, right? It's just the 3-4 lines that are there. Allowing that data to be taken from the data points that are there back from LinkedIn, right? And you're kind of prompting it very specifically, saying that this person has, this skill set, talk about X problem and define it in this particular way. The system is able to understand that. Obviously, you fine tune it, and today you have the memory concept already in play. We've kind of switched that on in Telescope. So what works, we understand that. What doesn't work, it kind of gets rejected out. So that's kind of about the prompting side, I would say. Going back into the growth side for me, when we first started out on trying to acquire traffic for the website, today organically we get about 100 signups every day without putting in any effort. When we put in effort, we get about 400 to 500 signups in a day. That's usually because we're a PLG based product. And in the initial days, influencer partnerships made a very, very big deal for us. We made a lot of noise via that. A lot of people who partnered up with us spoke about how Telescope is like the Tinder for sales and how they saw XYZ outcomes by using Telescope. So what we also did interestingly on an LLM search standpoint is we started using Reddit a lot. We saw people speaking about, oh, okay, like how do I, do outreach? How do I find the right person who I want to speak to? So we started going and talking about Telescope in this Reddit conversations and posts. And very weirdly, today I was just telling this to her also, right now we get about 1 or 2 inbound leads, people who book calls with us just by saying that, hey, I discovered you because I was asking ChatGPT, how do I do the best, what's the best way for me to do lead generation? And we probably pop up over there in one of the recommended ones. It was quite shocking to see this. So when we went back, okay, what's causing it? It was all these Reddit posts that we did. Only then did we find out that, okay, OpenAI has a partnership with Reddit and they scrape so much of content from Reddit. And it worked out very well for us. So in short, even from a GTM standpoint, what I would say is going back into JJ's point about getting content out there, but again, not shitty content, right? It's got to be valuable content that's out there. And again, it's not just limited to the website. What are the other public platforms that you can be at? I see a lot of retail businesses today optimizing towards Yelp, which is a platform that a lot of people use in the US, but discovery via that, because Yelp again is sharing data back into the LLMs. A lot of opportunity in that, probably mapping it out, understanding where the different touch points are, and then pushing it back into the LLMs to understand that.
Thank you. I'll just, in conscious of time, I'll try and wrap 2 questions into one and sort of give you all the chance to answer. So, Adam, you talked about, I don't really care if we lose traffic so long as the right customers find me in the GPTs and I pick that up. How do we win in the GPTs? And then secondly, I think a lot of marketers are getting worried because it's not like Google anymore where there's consolidation. There's Claude, there's Perplexity, there's ChatGPT, Copilot. Do I have to go and figure out how to optimize for each of these? Do we think we're going to head to a convergence where basically the rules apply for all GPTs, or will it be very specific? So you're going to have tools and strategies for each.
Good question, and I don't think we've got a definitive answer yet because it's just moving so fast. I think we will need to have strategies for each, because I think just like the traditional search engines kind of optimize their scoring, their ranking, etc., and you do optimize separately. I think it's going to be the case for these kind of generative answer engines as well. How do we win? It's, as JJ mentioned, I mean, a lot of LLMs they don't know everything, and so they're still relying on search, and the optimizations that we did for search are still very relevant in this age as well. I think one thing that you can really improve is making sure the underlying model knows about your product and positioning, and that goes back to having good content. But it's not just blog posts and things like that, but it's when you look at the current models, they're really running out of data, and so they're trying to find data everywhere. And for example, a lot of the improvements in the last few years were just LLMs learning on a lot of high quality transcripts of podcasts. And so it's this sort of data that maybe we weren't optimizing for because we couldn't do backlinks, we couldn't really do attribution there very well. These things actually, this type of data helps the underlying models understand your product, your positioning, how you differ, and learn more. And having more of that content, I think, will really help to improve the underlying model's knowledge of your product. And then when they then do search and analyze the search results and provide the final answer, I think that will definitely help. And Pierre mentioned around how the models do comparisons, etc. That actually, I think a lot of that content will help producing good quality answers there. Because when we do have a product, I test that in ChatGPT to see, what results we have when I compare ourselves against some of the major competitors, and those tables are wrong just because we don't have enough content out there that would definitely position us against every competitor and also describe all the features in detail. And so having that multimodal content from which the models can learn that and then use that in their answers, I think that's going to be a big win.
two things. One is that AI overviews specifically are basically a retrieval augmented generation product. So they're based on Google web search results. And people have kind of know this, but they kind of ignore it. But actually, it's kind of critical. So everything you're doing for Google SEO is 100% relevant for AIOs. Okay. As for comparison stuff and trying to influence AIOs, we've had great success with my clients where actually one of their competitors was eating their traffic by jumping over them into AI overviews. We basically went head on with them they were winning by X versus Y kind of blog post. They were winning in AI overviews. We came up with our own X versus Y, okay? And within 4 days, we actually saw a measured difference in sentiment about how AI overviews was talking about our client's product. So we actually moved the needle very quickly. So, and we knew what to do there because we actually, we saw the problem and the team was experienced. We had the tools. We just dived in head on. Now, when you look at the other LLMs, the thing that I worry about is that if you're asking about old, when the model was trained, if you're asking knowledge that was accurate back then, they probably know it well enough. The problem is that things are moved very quickly. And this is why I think ChatGPT and Microsoft are always going to be in bed together, but they're always going to be fighting. Because ChatGPT OpenAI doesn't have a good web scale search engine. They just don't. So they will need Bing because they have to depend on that. Them moving to uploading feeds and stuff, the industry has done that before. Bing is doing that now with Index Now for web search. It doesn't kind of work. You have to go get it, okay? As opposed to wait for people to give it to you. So we are heading right now, the trend is to head to everything being a retrieval augmented generation, a RAG product as a web search, where whether you go to the chatgpt.com, whether you go to Claude, Perplexity is RAG basically, yeah. So everything you're doing for SEO, everything we've talked about for the last 30 odd years is still relevant. You said something earlier quite interesting where I can't remember the phrasing. So sorry to butcher it. And I was going a bit blank now and drawing blank on my point at the same time. So many times when you explain to Google indexing to clients, to people, you say, listen, Google Indexer is just another browser. We used to remember back in the old days, we had to optimize for Internet Explorer 6, sorry for the heart attack, Firefox, and then Chrome came along and this and that. And now we basically have a fairly homogeneous browser landscape. We're back now to having a very, very heterogeneous browser landscape because each LLM is doing things slightly differently. So you're talking about, the tables are wrong, the multimodality people are talking about, 100%. You need to make sure that however weird way, OpenAI is doing it, or Perplexity is doing it, or Claude is doing it, Anthropic is doing it, you have to optimize for that browser to actually understand your content so they can actually index it and then, show it up and, surface it in their responses.
My answer to that would be that currently you can appear in all LLMs if you have very clean SEO house, it's all content is good quality, you have good references to that content, i.e. backlinks. If you follow good content principles and good reputation principles, you will be ranking everywhere in all search channels. Having said that, we're in a massive stage of flux. Just a month ago, Google rolled out the news about releasing AI mode in the US. It's coming to Europe soon, just some legislation delays. But that they've also at the same time unindexed a ton of content on across entire web we saw 40% unindexed, 80% unindexed, 60% unindexed. So businesses that had 2,000 pages had 1,800 pages unindexed a couple of weeks ago, to create more space for AI mode. And also they've integrated PPC in search, which is now search ads, which is going to be completely generated by Google. No more PPC people required. In fact, agencies, big marketing agencies like Group M, have let go 60% of their PPC people, have sold off that function, in fact. So it is a big signal that, PPC, for example, has been impacted dramatically. They're still, integrating these big pieces of puzzles into the LLMs, and it is still changing and in flux quite a bit. However, one main advice I would have on this is that Google owns 80% of all internet searches. Google owns 80% of all ads market. So whatever Google does, reference that and worry about other LLMs, smaller markets later. And they will have the gold standard. And if you do like searches yourself, reference those businesses that surface number one, references the businesses that surface within Gemini, ChatGPT, etc. And then just copy that. And I think, sort of like that's kind of like the main takeaway from my side. I would what we're seeing in the data.
So my point over here kind of would be is also about like focusing a lot on like partnerships, because there's a good opportunity when it comes to like partnerships and SEO, especially in the case with LLMs, cross collaborating with other, complementing companies or content that can like add value for like common customer bases. One example I can probably give over here is this was more like a growth hack that I came across from a story that I read. So in Perplexity, there was this one company that kept ranking for when someone kept asking about, hey, like, which is a top legal law firm in the US. And this was a small law firm with like less than like 5 people, somewhere in like South Carolina. And what happened is they partnered up with a PR firm to do like a PR article. And what happened is Perplexity was able to understand that. And again, like Perplexity like took some time to like, pull that down, but it was almost there for a month. But for 30 days, they had like uninterrupted, like, free traffic that came in. And this was basically like a growth hack, right? So I would probably say it's also about experimenting a lot. Like, don't limit yourself to like just having few limitations. Okay, this is how it's got to be. Like, experiment, play around, do those partnerships, fail fast also. Because again, like if you think something's not working with one of your tactics, you can obviously like pull out of it. And the advantage with all of this is, compared to like us spending on Google ads or Meta ads, right? Like it's not as expensive as that. Like if you run a test for like 10 grand on Meta, like it's gone, you're not going to get the money back. But you can probably run the same experiment on like, on content and trying to like teach the LLM search in some way. And it would probably not even cost you as much as like $500 to do it. So that would kind of like be my key takeaways with what I've been focusing on at Telescope, and also like a couple of other few areas. Focus on partnerships, build that content with, curation that is there, and kind of like manipulate the LLM. Again, I have no idea how that works on the technical side. I'm going to probably bug you guys on a lot of questions later, but yeah. Thank you.
Amazing. Some super useful advice from all of you. This would typically be the section where I'd open up for questions, but also we'll have a section where we'll sort of turn to you guys and ask what you guys have been doing, what you're trying, what's working, what's not working. Just realize, just time-wise, we sort of overshot already. So I'm going to bring it to a close just to be respectful of people that might need to leave. But yeah, we have the space for a bunch of time. So if you want to network, chat, ask more questions, feel free. There's a lot of juice and drinks and cookies that if you don't consume, I'll have to carry with me. So let my gym session be a real gym session. Yeah, exactly. Cool. Yeah. Well, oh yeah. I brought cookies deliberately, inserting the pun. But yeah, thank you for coming. Like I said, this is going to be a monthly thing. So 7th of August is going to be the next one. Tell people we want it to be a full atmosphere. We want to bring corporates, startups, investors, agencies all together to discuss what's happening, what's working, what's not working, meet each other, get leads. If traffic fails, this event will not. So yeah, really thank you for taking your morning to spend time with us. I do have a sponsored slide. So thanks again to Langsync and Digenius. We'll hopefully hear from Digenius next time, so you can understand a little bit more about what they're up to and how they're bringing a lot of these different channels together as well. So yeah, with that, I'd like to thank you all and have a great rest of your day.